see the whole world shaking, and you feel your heart is breaking, take my hand, no hesitating. When you're just so tired of trying, all alone you feel like hiding. Together we'll keep fighting. There's no stopping us. Hold on, we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. Don't stop now. Hold on, we're gonna make it. We're gonna mountains too high we can climb it. Fearless, we're taking the moment. There's no stopping us. Hold on, we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. Can you see the sun is shining like a new hope? Feel it rising, coming over the horizon. There's no stopping us. Hold on, we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. Don't stop now. Hold on, we're gonna make it. We're gonna mountains too high we can climb it. Fearless, we're taking the moment. There's no stopping us. Hold on, we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. Don't you give up, don't you give up on me. Don't you give up, don't you give up now. Don't you give up, don't you give up on me. Don't you give up, don't you give up now. Don't you give up, don't you give up on me. Don't you give up, don't you give up now. Don't you give up, don't you give up on me. Don't you give up, don't you give up now. There's no stopping.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you like my new introduction. I'm still having some technical difficulties that might have shown a little slowly a bit before I start going. So I apologize for that. But that's my new intro. Hope you liked it. And it's January 30th. Let me give myself a little more light in the background. I think we need this. A wee bit more light. Okay. And that's better. That's better. It's January 30th. We're looking to get more snow. More towards dawn for Hampton Roads. Won't be much. It's going to turn over quickly to rain probably by midday. But I think north of us, going to Williamsburg, Richmond, up to Washington, you'll be getting a lot more. I have some Facebook friends up in Richmond, and people were buying lots and lots of bread and milk and eggs. So they will be having lots and lots of French toast, I imagine. Okay, so let's see what topic we're going to discuss today. So I don't know why it's slowing up like that. I apologize. The video is slowing up at the end. I'm getting some new error reading here, and I have to speak to Restream.io. That's the one. That's the platform I use to broadcast. You know, that's what happens with these type of software programs. They're always developing, and this is the first time I've seen this warning, and I got to figure out what's going on. But anyway, but it seems to be only happening when I show a video. So today's topic is an appraisal versus a home inspection. And a lot of people are confused about the two and what's the difference. All right. And the first thing I wanted to say when it comes to the appraisal, an appraisal is needed for a mortgage. So if you're buying a house with a mortgage, the bank has to know for sure that the asking price is what the house is worth. So if you're purchasing a house that's worth, or what I should say, if the purchase price on the contract is $100,000, okay, and let's just say the asking price was $105,000, you negotiated, you got to $100,000. Now, the appraiser, and he's the one who does the appraisal, has to go out there and make sure that that house is worth $100,000. Because if it's not, the company is not going to lend you that money. Now, let's break it down even more, because let's say on this house that you're purchasing for $100,000, you put down 10%, and 10% equals $10,000. So your mortgage is actually going to be for $90,000. So the bank, by using the appraiser, will go out to an appraisal to make sure that house is worth the $90,000. And if it's not worth the $90,000, let's say it's worth $85,000, based upon how your contract is written, you could either renegotiate for the $85,000, and if the seller does not agree to go down to the $85,000, if it's written in your contract, and that's a whole other episode, you could be released from the contract, and any money you put down in the form of an earnest money deposit, you would get back. In this area of Hampton Roads, earnest money deposit is typically $500. All right. Now, keep in mind the word earnest is in that title, earnest money deposit. Earnest also means to be sincere. And it shows that you're being earnest, that you truly want this house. All right. So you put that down. The more money you put down, the more earnest you are. So if you put down $1,000, it looks better for the seller, especially if there's going to be multiple offers. And as we discussed before, there are many multiple offers out there. So the more you put down, the better it looks to the seller, okay? But for the early example, if the appraisal comes out less than the purchase price, and you don't have a meeting of minds where you can't reconcile that, you know, if the seller won't come down, you could be released from the contract and get your earnest money deposit back. Now, in some really hot areas, like I have a Facebook friend who's a realtor out in Las Vegas, and one person paid the difference. There was a difference of $7,000 between the appraisal and the purchase price on the contract. and the buyer paid that difference. Okay, because again, the bank is only going to lend you the money up to the appraisal amount. Okay, so the buyer came in and made up that difference. Now it could be, all around the country right now, we do have a seller's market. You have some areas where they're extremely hot, and Las Vegas is hot. It's hot weather-wise, ha ha ha. All right, but this person came in with the $7,000 difference. Okay, and there are different ways you could go about it. I mean, you could maybe meet the seller halfway and say, well, if you bring it down to 87, I'll bring in 2,000, whatever. It could still be negotiated, but the bottom line is that the bank won't lend you the money to the purchase price. They'll lend you the money to the appraisal. Okay, so the bank has to make sure that that house is worth that amount of money. If you're buying it with cash, you don't have to get an appraisal. The only reason why you want to get an appraisal, if you want to make sure that the money you're putting down is truly the market value of this house. Okay. Now, what does the appraiser do when they try to figure out the market price, the fair market value of the house? Well, they're going to compare it with other houses, usually in a 1 mile radius, that are similar to the house you're buying. So if you're buying a house that's 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, around, let's say, 1,800 square feet, they will look at other houses in that area, okay, with basically the same features. Now, it gets a little bit more involved, but that's the basics to it. And they'll say, well, this house sold last month at 105, and another house down the road sold at 100,000, and that's how they going to base it. When I represent the buyer and they want to purchase a house, I'll do a CMA or a comparative market analysis for them, and I'll see if the seller is asking too much. Because what's happening now, a lot of sellers, because of the seller's market, the favors are in their in their way. Okay, they have the upper hand. Some of them are asking for a little bit more than what it might be valued at by an appraiser. So I'll do a CMA and make sure that the seller is not is not going to the true market value of the house. And I said, all right, if you want to put it in an offer, we'll put it in at this amount, which would be lower because the seller is asking too much. Now, when I represent the seller, I have to do the same thing, okay? Because I'm going to give my seller a price range of what they should set the house at, and I'll do the same thing. I will, look at all the various properties in the area, usually within a 1 mile radius, to see what has sold and by what amounts. Now, if you're in a very rural area and the housing inventory is sparse, you might have to go with a 2 mile radius. Okay, and it's not easy doing a CMA. A lot of people think it's easy. A lot of programs we have within our websites, even with my website, will spit out a CMA for you. But there's a lot of thought that goes into it. They're looking at it very objectively, but you really have to compare the properties when you do the CMA, because you have to look at the pictures of the homes, because some homes have been updated more than others. And the only way you see that by actually looking at the photos of your comps. The computer is just like generating a number, right? It's not looking at the houses subjectively, just objectively. And each appraiser, a lot of times they come in with different amounts. Okay, I've had that experience in the past. So it's not an exact science. You could get the the ball field, or the ballpark, amount. But one appraiser might appraise it $5,000 to $10,000 more, and another one might not. Okay, so it's a tricky situation. But the appraiser goes in, and they'll actually do. I mean, when they go in, they'll measure the house. They'll check to see, for upgrades. The other thing I want to mention, this happens a lot because when we go into talking about home inspections, the appraiser will also check for things that might be of danger to the new owner. Okay, so if there's broken glass, broken window panes for VA and FHA loans, that has to be replaced by the seller. I'm doing one right now where the steps going up to the front porch and the back porch are all over 30 inches. There's no handrails, and the appraiser is saying those handrails have to go in, which actually, let's go down to my next caption. These are what's called lender required repairs. Now, even though the appraiser is not going to be an employee of the bank where you're getting the mortgage, when they go in and they say, okay, these handrails have to go in, or these windows have to be replaced, that becomes what's called a lender required repair. Okay, and that has to be taken care of before you close. Otherwise, you won't close. So lender required repairs that are set up by the appraiser or that is requested by the appraiser have to be done before you close. All right. Let's say, for instance, the house does not have any heat. The heating system is broken. Well, a house must have heat. All right. So if there's a problem with that, it has to be fixed before it closes. That's if you're going with an FHA loan, a Fannie Mae loan, a VA loan. There's other type of loans out there. Let's say, for an example, which happens at times, the heat pump outside the house gets stolen or gets destroyed. Okay, it happens more times than not. So now the house doesn't have any heat. So then you have to go with what's called a renovation loan. And that's a whole other topic. I don't want to go into that right now. But let's go back to our simple situation where the person is buying a regular resale home. It's not a foreclosure with a lot of problems. But there's a couple of things that the appraiser picks up. And for instance, the guardrails are not there. They have to be put in. Okay. One more note for our area, for Hampton Roads. It may not be for all of Virginia. It's not for every state. But since we are surrounded by lots and lots of water, each house has to have a termite moisture inspection. All right, because we have termites in the area, and we get moisture in the crawl spaces, or if you have a basement or whatever, and that has to be inspected because that could really damage your foundation, right? So that has to be cleared. So if the termite inspector went in there and said, okay, it has to be sprayed for termites, I see termite activity, would that would become a lender required repairs, right? Because the lender's saying the house has to be clear of termites. And this usually a spraying is applied, and then the termite company will issue a clear certificate. There's really a lot more in this episode. You plan it out, and then more things come about. There's so much involved with it. All right, but that'll be a lender required repairs when it comes to the appraisal. Okay. So let's go back up to here. So I said the appraisal is needed for a mortgage, but the home inspection is optional. Okay. But highly recommended. Okay. And I didn't have enough room to type all that out. So the home inspection is optional, but highly recommended. Now, what does the home inspector does? Well, he's going to go in there and he's going to do a lot more within the house than the appraiser, because they'll go around, they'll check all the outlets to make sure that they are set up correctly, that they are polarized correctly. They'll check the appliances to make sure they're working correctly. They'll go on the roof to see if there's any damage on the roof. They'll look at the siding. They will go into the crawl space to see if there's any damage. They may also see termite inspection, but they'll look also for, and they'll see if there's any activity, but they rather keep that for the expert, for the termite inspector. But they'll see if there's any problem in the crawl spaces, any beams that need to be reinforced. So basically, they're going to go through the whole house to make sure it's working correctly. They'll check the water pressure in the bathrooms. All right. There's a lot more that they do. Home inspections usually run between an hour and a half to 2 hours. So that they're just in one house and doing all that work. All right. Again, no bank is asking, oh, what's the outcome of the home inspection? No. That's only for your purposes. To have peace of mind that the house is in good working order, or you may ask for repairs from the seller. All right. So the home inspector goes in. He's saying that the GFCI switch in the bathroom, the kitchen, are not working properly. They didn't shut off. That has to be repaired. Okay. Couldn't get the dishwasher to work right. There's a ceiling fan that's it's shaking too much, when it's on. So these are more the items throughout the house that are specific to that house, and you write them all up in the home inspection. And then the buyer's agent, if I'm representing you, I would be your buyer's agent. I would write it up, the repairs that you would like to be repaired by the seller. I send it to the listing agent, and the listing agent talks it over with their client or their seller. And it's a negotiation process again. And so the seller says, okay, well, I'll take care of this. I'll take care of that. Bada bing, bada boom. I'll take these off. Let me see if the buyer will do these. And it goes back and forth. Now, if there's too many repairs and the seller says, no, I'm not going to do it, the buyer finds out many wrong things for the house, and you can't come to a meeting of the minds on the home inspection, who's going to fix what, then you also have the right to be released from the contract and get back your earnest money deposit. Okay? So that protects you. A home inspection is actually a contingency, right? Even though you have a ratified contract before you go to the home inspection, that contract is contingent upon a home inspection where you have a meeting of minds and everything. You work out everything, whether there are repairs, and you decide who does what of the repairs. There may be no repairs, and the house is fine. Many times the home inspection is done for instance, a foreclosure where the seller or the bank is saying, we're selling it as is. Meaning we're not going to do anything to the house. So if you do a home inspection, it's only for your purposes, for you to decide whether or not to continue with the contract. So let's say you're looking at a foreclosure and you find a multitude of problems with it. You could be then released from the contract. There are time limits to it, okay? If you have a 7-day home inspection period, you have to come to that decision by the 7th day. And it's always the day after ratification. That's when the clock starts ticking. And if you set up for 7 days, it's 7 days after ratification. And by that 7th day, you have to say, well, either I'm going to go for it or, I'm going to be released from the contract. That's for an as-is property. So once again, the home inspection is more detailed about the property that you are buying, all right? The appraiser is going to go in there. They're going to see if the house is safe, but they're not going to check all the sockets. They're not going to check the dishwasher, the refrigerator, the washing machines, if there are any there. They're not going to do all of that. They're going to see if that house is worth the money that you are going to ask a mortgage for, okay? Now, I have some graphics here. Let me bring it up here. Okay. And just this little text here to what is the difference between an appraisal and home inspection? If you're planning to buy a home, an appraisal is an important step in the process. It's a professional evaluation of the market value of the home you would like to buy. In most cases, an appraisal is ordered by the lender to confirm or verify the value of the home prior to lending a buyer money for that purchase. It's also a different step in the process from a home inspection, which assesses the condition of the home before you finalize the transaction. And here they're doing, now here they're saying a home purchase is typically the largest investment someone may. Protect yourself by getting your investment appraised. Now here they're saying investment. Again, if you are buying it for cash, you may want to get it appraised just to make sure that you are not spending more than you really should on the property. But again, if you're applying with a mortgage, okay, you must have an appraisal here. When you apply for a mortgage, an unbiased appraisal, which is required by the lender, is the best way to confirm the value of the home based on the sale price. Regardless of what you're willing to pay for the house, if you'll be using a mortgage to fund your purchase, the appraisal will help make sure the bank doesn't loan you more than what the home is worth. And here's something that is basically dealing with today's market. This is especially critical in today's seller's market, where low inventory is driving an increase in bidding wars, which can push home prices upward. When sellers are in a strong position like this, they tend to believe they can get whatever price they want for their house, under the assumption that competing buyers will be willing to pay more. And that's what we're finding out right now, that a lot of the sellers are pushing the prices on the homes, and the appraisers are coming in and they're not giving them that value. And this is a good thing, because you don't want the market to get out of control. You don't want the houses to be so overvalued that if we come in a situation where we have, as a country, economic difficulties, if we go into recession, that's going to be even worse. That's going to hurt the economy even more if these homes are overpriced. So we don't want that to happen. Everybody wants their house to be valued a little bit more, so they make more of a profit when they sell it, but it can't be overpriced. So in simplest terms, a home appraisal determines the value of a home, while a home inspection determines the condition of the home. All right. And then I'm going to put this up on my blog. Actually, both articles this article is on my blog, the first one. The second one I'm going to post, and the home inspection process. This is from the Housing Wire. It's an online service dealing with real estate, and should you skip it? And again, here, should you skip the one and save 300? That's basically the price in our area. They run from 3 to 350. It all depends on the square footage of the house, how many rooms, how many bathrooms. If it's a bigger house, it could go up higher. I mean, you have like 5 bedrooms and 3 baths. It'll be higher than the 300. I haven't seen any appraisals in this area up to 700. But they could go, other parts of the country, you're up in New York or you're in California, it may be that high because the prices of the homes are much higher. And basically, just to summarize, they said here, there could be safety hazards with the house. They'll check the roofs, its electrical system. They'll let you know if there's any dangers within the house. Like the one that I'm doing right now, the house is a little bit older. So even though the prior owner put in the plugs it's the 3 prongs where you have the grounding stick that goes in there, but the wiring is not grounded. They just put that in. They just change the outlet, but the house is not grounded. So it's not necessary that it's done now. It's not necessary to be done for the it's not necessary to be done for the home appraisal, but the buyer should know just to be careful not to overload the circuits with that when you don't have, well, not even just overloading the circuits, but you could get shocked if it's not grounded, okay? So it's important to have the home inspection. I've had people who, let's close this out here, who, had their father come in. He said he knew a lot. And actually, I mean, he put it in, we signed the document that the house was good, and they weren't going to ask for any repairs. I mean, unless you have a family member who really knows the makeup of the house, the wiring, looking at the roof. The wiring is the trickiest one because, again, a lot of times when an inspector looks at the electric box, we have all the breakers, and a lot of times this term comes up, they did a double tap on one, and they're not supposed to do that. I'm not an electrician, but a lot of times that comes up where the box is not completely wired correctly. There are some issues. So, and those are those issues where, you could get a fire. So unless your family member is someone who really knows about the makeup of a house, especially when it comes to electrical, I would hire someone. It's going to cost you $250 or so, or in that price range. If you don't get the house, you don't get the money back. It's just money that you spent to make a decision. It's possible, and I'm not a tax accountant. Maybe you could delete it, or not delete it, but deduct it on your tax returns as an expense. Okay, perhaps, but it's something you're not going to be refunded if the sale does not go through. Actually, you're not going to be refunded on the appraisal if the sale doesn't go through. And buying a house, there's a lot that goes into it. And right off the bat, you have a earnest money deposit that's like $500. You have the appraisal that's about $500, and so that's $1,000. And then you have a home inspection. Let's say it's around $350. So right off the bat, you're spending $1,350. Now, if the house doesn't go through, you get back your $500, but you'll be out $850 there. So you have to. It's a big process buying a house. For some people, $850 to lose It's a lot. So it's good to work with an agent who's well uh, involved and informed about the industry to help you make the best decision. Like me, if you want to buy a house, please contact me. Or if you want to list a house, please contact me. But this is what's involved with buying a house. Okay, it's possible that you might drop $800 on one house that did not go well before you find a house that things go well. Okay, so the appraisal is needed for the mortgage. You have to get it. If you're buying something for cash, and you want to make sure that it's worth the money that you're buying for, you could have an appraisal. But for you yourself, it's not needed. I have investors who are buying properties actually below what they're asking for, and they're foreclosed properties, so they're already, depreciated in their price. They're I can't think of the word right now what I'm thinking of, but properties that are in not in the best condition, so they're being sold below the market value, and they're going to try to get a little bit lower, so they don't need to do an appraisal. They know, like, once they get the house up to par, because they're going to buy it and renovate it and flip it, So they, in fact, I never had somebody ask for an appraisal when they bought it for cash, even when they became like a real expensive property that was about $120,000. They know the value of it. They're going to go in, fix it up, and flip it, and then they know what they could get for it after the renovations. All right, so let's keep it just with that for today. Okay, we're about a little over a half hour. I apologize. Okay, I always like to keep it below, just around a half hour, so I don't lose your interest. Okay, but I think I hear my producer Leonard calling me. We have a famous person in the audience.
Chris, great news. We have a special guest in our studio audience. He is an American singer, songwriter, musician and record producer. A prominent figure in popular music during the second half of the 20th century. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Stevie Wonder.
I apologize. I don't know what's happening. I have to contact the software developers on this program. I'm sorry that you didn't see Stevie Wonder. We'll try to bring him in next week as well. So have a good week. Enjoy the snow if you get some. Be safe. Be well. Be kind to others. Wear your mask. Wash your hands. I hope that wasn't too much, but we'll see you next week. All right. Take care.